I think if somebody just found a new disease, right? Nobody knew anything about the disease and wanted to run a study using pills. I mean, there would be no way to
exactly.
form a positive.
So that's
penicillin kill it or not?
Right.
Nowadays, probably not.
So actually, I was talking to my friend who's running clinical trial on new drugs, and I was trying to do this study. I asked her, what would be a good example? She said, well, in the drug trial, often there's no positive control, or they use a drug, for example, like aspirin, working on thinning the blood clot, whatever, thinning the blood. So they use aspirin, which is already known to do this function. They have another drug is testing on treating the heart disease or something, So they have a drug, known drug, they give it to patient. On top of this drug, they give another drug to see if it enhances even further on the effect of aspirin. So that's actually how it's done in the clinical trial. And of course, placebo is often given as an active control. For positive control, it's more difficult. And instead of giving one drug, so they give two drugs.
If you got a really good drug already in place, they're not going to give you the approval to do the trial.
That's right. So there are practical reasons positive control is difficult in that. So anyway, so we emphasize, ideally in all the biological systems, we want to have both, but often you can only have one or the other, sometimes, because it's not available.
So you said that you couldn't use a positive control if it was a pill that used a different action to control the same issue. I mean, is it just never ever explored at all in a paper? Like if you have a new pill that through a different action cures the same disease, they wouldn't compare that to another pill even though it's a different action?
I think that's the closest control you can use, actually, the one you give example, through different mechanisms but work. So
that is acceptable though, like if you were going to publish something to use a positive control that did a different action, it was totally unacceptable.
Well, they would be listed as a positive control. They would be listed as a comparison.
Yeah, it's a comparison. Yeah, they probably wouldn't call, strictly speaking, as a positive control. Everything else has to be the same, So, okay. Okay, so for the question number 2, the first 4 questions are the main question we try to compare pre and post, right? If you remember that. So let's take a look. The green one are the ones that 100, yes, minor controls. We don't expect these students to do well. So 101 students in last cell biology lab in last fall, they took the same question, these 2 questions that I showed you about, and look at this one. So these 2, 2.1, 2.3, are the negative control. Obviously, you can see this one's more difficult for students, this one's relatively easy. And this is the positive control. Very low percentage of students, less than 20%, got it right, even after taking all 3 lab courses and lecture courses. And this one is the experimental group. As you can see, about 70-some% student get 73% student indicating this is the experiment they are testing, which is relatively easy part. Okay, so from these we know positive control is more challenging for students.
So you didn't mention a positive control before. Was that something that you knew or expected that students would do well on already, and just any student, or did that emerge from the experiments?
It's emerged. I initially thought, because we all try to put into learning goal for intro student, for capstone course, this is something our students ought to know by the time they graduate, or incrementally to practice and to know better. However, nobody specifically teach this concept, like leading students to recognize and practice on. So I kind of know that, and then by giving the question to the TAs really prompted me more eye-opening. Like this is indeed an area that we can improve upon, and so that's kind of the story. So when we gave it to the students, these are the students in the spring this semester at the beginning of the course. As you can see how similar the pattern is to the students from last fall. So the students from last fall took the traditional, for better words or worse, took the lab without intervention, show very similar pattern as the students who at the beginning of the spring lab course. And the post-test, as you can see, students improve in every question except this question, but I will tell you more about this question. So even in the experimental group, which most students do well, 73 or 77, 83%, 100% students go that way for the spring semester.
Can you say a little bit more about the course? So in addition to these control activities, were students also conducting experiments?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, were the experiments they were conducting for other course activities, drawing on any of this language, or did it have controls integrated into those experimental?
Good question. So the course is designed the following way. First half the semester, students working on basic techniques. Okay, they are told they practice on the techniques, and the second half of the semester, they are conducting something called independent research project. So they come up with an experimental scenario they want to further testing. Okay, so during that time, they are practicing heavily in their own experiment situation. How do they design experiment? So we actually went around to talk to each group of students, make sure they have control in place how they design experiments. Mm-hmm. And then finally, they conducting the experiments. They write a proposal, their experiment proposal, and they gave a final presentations on that.
Now, this class already existed, and you changed it, or is this a new course? It's
existing course.
So was something lost in? Did you? I mean, when you added this new element to the course, did you have to take something away from the old version?
So this is a 2-credit course, and students meet for 4 hours every week. So of course, the instructor always nervous about taking too much time, and I'm always try to be conscientious about, I hope it doesn't, very pay attention to how much time each of the activity will take, discussion and so on. But from my observation, the lab always ends earlier, except a few. So by taking away 20 minutes, in my mind, it didn't impact students what else they need to do for their lab.
And so the rest of the course, the structure of the introductory labs and then the projects, that was all framed the same as it used to be?
Yes. Didn't change the structure of the course. Only try to integrate these activities into the course.
I mean, the previous course before this was all cookie cutter labs. It was basically the same thing that every student has done for 200 years and will never work for whatever reason anyway.
No,
everything's written out. That's what it was when I was teaching it. But that's what I said. It's very different now than what it was back then when I was, because that was 10 years ago, now that I taught cell.
So interestingly, a molecular biology faculty, a faculty first time teaching another course in MCDB, core course, molecular biology. In one of their exams, this is a student told me about. This instructor asked a question about interpreting the results based on the control. And they were coming to tell me, the student from cell lab, if without the control activity, we will have no idea about these negative controls, whatever, because the professor never mentioned that in the course, yet gave a question on that. For people who did not take the cell biology, they totally got lost. They think it's an unfair question, no idea, so on. So it kind of gave us again, reinform us about the importance of these experiment design and controls. valued by all faculties, but by
So
faculty
that
members.
was a completely separate course that some
It's
students
completely,
happened to be taking.
yeah, they can mention to me, so, wow, we know what it is, you know. But otherwise, I would have not known. So that was kind of interesting.